Hello, friends, and welcome back to another set of malicious compliance stories. This one starts with a man named Rick, the kind of neighbor who sees an outdoor outlet and thinks free electricity. When his petty theft turned into a nuisance, our OP fought back with electrician friends, fake Wi-Fi, and strategic leaf-blowing revenge. It's petty perfection with an electrical twist. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. How to handle a neighbor from hell. Been living next to Rick for 20 years. First, it started with me coming home to find he'd hooked up an extension cord to one of my exterior outlets and was stealing my electricity. I have a friend who's an electrician, so after the cord was unhooked, before I could call the cops on him, I had my electrician pal come over and wire up that receptacle to 240 volts. I never heard any smoke or loud pops or zaps, but I hope he'd been stealing my electricity to power something really expensive. Never plugged an extension cord into any of my outlets again. He also has frequent weird house guests that stay for days or months. I think he lures them over with a free place to stay and alcohol. We got tired of them always wandering over, knocking on our door, always interrupting us and asking for free Wi-Fi. So finally we set up a fake open Wi-Fi network that looks like free Wi-Fi, but when you try to connect to the internet, you get redirected and you can only view the infamous never gonna give you up music video, but nothing else. So you basically get rickrolled. We have a photo of the singer of that video in a frame with LED lights behind his eyes, and when someone tries to access it, his eyes light up so we know when they're doing it. The Rickroll fake Wi-Fi network seems to have stopped the weird people showing up asking to use our Wi-Fi. He also used to cut through the back part of my yard all the time, and one time his dog ran into our yard and attacked my husband while we were doing yard work. So animal control got an immediate call, and he had to fence in his backyard, which he did a horrible job on, and several times his dog has gotten loose, and I caught him waltzing through my backyard, walking after it like it was no issue. Last year, I expanded our chain link fence all the way out to the property line so he can't cut through our yard anymore, and his dog is better contained. I built a shed back there and was tired of that being outside the fence anyway. I got a survey and found his bushes were encroaching on my property by quite a large area, so those got trimmed back too. I also put up privacy slats in the fence, and I don't know why that bothered him so much. But after living for years with this ugly broken-down Bronco parked on his lawn and overhanging the property line in the front, I'm totally at peace with him being ticked off by my new fence while I get the full use of my property now. I also had the new fence expansion put in with a 3 to 4 inch gap at the bottom, and our property is raised up above his. For some reason, when these houses were built, his is dug down by about 4 to 5 feet, so as his invasive junk diseased elm trees drop all manner of leaves, dead, diseased branches, and seeds in my yard, rather than quietly pick it all up like I used to, I just pull out my leaf blower and blow it all under the fence and back into his yard. I xeriscape my yard, no lawn. And some years back when I was trimming back my large perennials, the wind picked up some of the trimmings and they blew onto his lawn. I found them all thrown unceremoniously up onto my porch. I think of this and smile every time I return all the leaves, dead branches, and elm seeds from his tree, and I blow them right onto his lawn. Larger branches that I used to put through our big chipper, shredder, tossed over the fence and on top of his lawn for him to deal with. And he never trims that tree. It's very large and mostly dead and drops a lot of dead branches constantly. He also burns his fireplace in the summer and burns his trash rather than pay for trash service, which smells horrible and always gives me migraines. Yesterday, we stained a bunch of wood, and the stains are letting off a ton of vapors in the hot weather today, and I have some big, very powerful fans outside blowing the vapors over in his direction. One of the other neighbors told me he keyed her car once, and when he finally got rid of the Bronco and got himself a shiny new Subaru Impreza, but he was too cheap to pay for full insurance, and some lady broadsided him during a light change, wasn't deemed at fault for the accident, he said, she said, and several weeks later, the car came back drivable, but mostly smashed. The deployed airbag still kind of hanging down on the sides. Karma gets credit for that one, though. We get along with everyone else in the neighborhood, but this guy. I literally gave away 300 plus pounds of fruit off my trees last year. Peaches, plums, apricots, it was a bumper crop. We've got a snowblower, and we help clear sidewalks for a lot of the folks, too. And I've given away tons of perennials and loaned out garden tools. We're generally overly helpful to everyone else except Rick. When it comes to him, I am a petty babe in total control of herself. He could have had amazing neighbors if he'd been even slightly considerate and been less of a nuisance and not bullied us and stolen from us. Sucks to suck. Honestly, guys, this person isn't just a good neighbor. They're the guardian of neighborhood balance. Everyone else gets snowblower service and free peaches. Rick gets VOC fumes and airborne wood stain. Fair trade, I'd say. You gave him every chance to be decent, and now he's living in a self-made junkyard, breathing wood stain and regret. And our next story. Tried to be nice about trespassing on our private lake. He took that as an invitation. A few weeks ago, our quiet little lakeside neighborhood got a notice from the HOA. It was a pretty straightforward message. Due to nearby public parks being closed for maintenance and overuse, we might see more outsiders trying to access our private lake to fish. The HOA reminded us that the lake docks and the clubhouse are maintained by our collective dues, and only members and their guests with visible lake tags were allowed to use the amenities. If we saw anyone fishing without tags, we were to politely ask them to leave or call the maintenance guy who would handle it. Our neighborhood's built like a circle around the lake. There's one main road looping around with docks spaced every so often. Signs at the entrance clearly state the area is private property, but I figured with everything going on, it was only a matter of time before someone ignored them. Sure enough, a few days after the letter, I walked out my front door and saw an unfamiliar pickup parked near the dock directly across from my house. A man and his 2 kids were fishing, poles cast out, a cooler beside them. I'd never seen them before. I walked over, trying not to come off as confrontational, and started chatting. "Nice day to be out," I said, nodding at the lake. "Yeah," the dad replied, smiling. "My boys needed some air. We've been cooped up forever." I asked if they lived in the neighborhood. He admitted they didn't. Said a friend told him about the lake, but that friend didn't live here either. Just sort of word of mouth, I guess. I leaned in and lowered my voice, not wanting to embarrass him in front of his kids. "Hey, just so you know, this is a private lake. You're technically not supposed to be here unless you're a guest with a tag." He looked surprised, even a little sheepish. "Oh man, I didn't realize. I'm sorry, I thought it was public." I believed him. He wasn't being rude, and his kids were clearly having a good time. I told him to go ahead and enjoy the morning, and I'd even give him a spare guest tag if someone gave him grief. He thanked me, and they stayed for another hour or two. No harm done. But 2 days later, I'm out on my usual walk around the lake and see the same truck, same man, same kids, this time at a dock 2 streets over. I paused for a second. Maybe he was back as someone's guest? I approached him again. "Hey there, you got those tags today?" He shook his head. "Nah, figured we'd just be quick. The boys really wanted to fish again." I kept it civil but firm. "Look, I get it, but this isn't public land. The people who live here pay HOA fees to maintain the lake. That means the docks, the benches, the fish, everything." He sighed and said, "We're not hurting anything, just fishing." We've had problems lately with this exact thing. If we let everyone do it, it gets out of hand. I let it go the other day, but you can't just keep coming back. That set something off. His calmness felt like defiance. He wasn't yelling, but he wasn't budging either. I said, "I'm giving you 10 minutes. If you're still here, the maintenance guy's coming, and you'll be asked to leave again." He shrugged. "Guess we'll wait and see." I turned around, walked home, and made the call. The maintenance guy, Bill, showed up a few minutes later in his truck. From my front window, I saw him walk over, clipboard in hand, have a short conversation, and then watch the man pack up his tackle and help his kids into the truck. I'm all for people getting outside and spending time with their kids. I genuinely am. But the lake isn't some abandoned reservoir. It's our shared space, funded by us, maintained by us. It's not about the fishing, really. It's about respecting boundaries. If he'd asked to be someone's guest, someone probably would have said yes. But just showing up again and again as if it's owed to you? That's when patience runs out. I haven't seen him since. I think you handled it fairly. You gave a polite heads up the first time and even offered to cover with a spare tag. Clear grace. When he treated that kindness like a standing invitation, you switched to the process the HOA asked residents to use. That's the right balance between neighborly and responsible. And our last story. The city tried to expropriate my family home for a luxury developer. I've lived in my house for 20 years. It's a tall 3-story detached home that my parents bought when I was a kid. And over the years, it's become more than just property. It's part of who I am. Every creak in the floor, every dent in the walls, every scratch on the banister tells a story. This isn't just where I live, it's where I grew up. So when I got home one day and found an official-looking envelope in the mailbox stamped with Notice of Expropriation, my stomach dropped. The letter explained that the city planned to purchase and demolish every house on my block to make room for a new apartment development. Not just one building, several. Apparently, my neighborhood had been earmarked for redevelopment under the city's new urban density plan. I reread it about 10 times, hoping I'd misunderstood, but no, it was real. They wanted to buy out my home and everyone else's, whether we liked it or not. Now, I live in Canada. This isn't some tiny city with no space left to build. It's massive, surrounded by forests, empty fields, and unused industrial zones. They could build anywhere. Yet somehow they decided to bulldoze a quiet, established residential street filled with families who'd been there for decades. It made no sense. Financially, it seemed stupid too. Why buy out 20 homes at inflated market prices just to flatten them when you could easily develop untouched land for half the cost? At first, I thought there had to be some mistake. But no, this was all part of a revitalization incentive. The city had already made deals with developers, and our street was in the way. The next few days were chaos. People on my block were panicking. Some were resigned to it, saying, "What can we do? You can't fight City Hall." Others, like me, were furious. One neighbor, a retired teacher, broke down crying when she talked about the garden she'd tended for 40 years. Another said her parents had built their house by hand. I wasn't going down quietly. I started researching property law, expropriation rights, municipal powers, compensation rules. You name it. That's when I found something that gave me a flicker of hope. Canada is a signatory to a UN human rights treaty that includes a clause stating, "Every person has the right to own, use, dispose of, and give that person's lawfully acquired possessions alone or in association with others. No person shall be arbitrarily deprived of such property." That word, arbitrarily, stuck with me. Because what the city was doing felt arbitrary. It wasn't about safety or infrastructure or essential public works. It was just profit. The city and a developer saw an opportunity to build luxury condos and cash in on urban revitalization. So I did what any stubborn homeowner would do. I lawyered up. I found a property rights attorney who specialized in expropriation cases. I showed him the notice, my deed, and the correspondence from the city. He listened carefully, then said something that made my blood boil and my heart race all at once. They can do this, but they have to prove it's for legitimate public benefit, not private development. And based on what you've shown me, it looks like they're pushing the limits. We filed an appeal immediately. The lawyer explained that under Canadian law, expropriation isn't automatically illegal, but the government has to justify it. If they're just trying to benefit a private developer, it's a huge red flag. A week later, my street was buzzing again, but this time not with panic. My lawyer had helped organize a community meeting to inform everyone about their rights. The turnout was incredible. Every neighbor came, plus a few local journalists once word got out. Turns out I wasn't the only one digging. A few people discovered that the city's development partner was a major construction company with ties to a city council member. Conflict of interest, anyone? We gathered petitions, contacted our local MP, and even reached out to the local provincial ombudsman's office. Once the media started covering it, the city backed off the aggressive tone and started talking about community consultation. Within a month, the entire redevelopment plan was put on hold pending review. That was 6 months ago. The city still hasn't sent another letter, and from what my lawyer says, they might never move forward, not after the bad press. But here's the kicker. A few weeks after that first big article came out, I got an anonymous envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a printed email chain between a city official and a developer, basically admitting that the public housing portion of the new complex was a front to justify the expropriation, while 80% of the apartments would be sold as high-end units. I handed it straight to my lawyer, and let's just say the city council meetings got real quiet after that. So for now, my home stands. If there's one thing I've learned from this, it's that you can fight City Hall. It takes money, patience, and a hell of a lot of stubbornness, but when something truly matters, you dig in your heels and don't move. Because sometimes the line between what's legal and what's right is drawn by the people who refuse to be pushed out. I love how this story flips the classic "you can't fight City Hall" myth. Turns out you can. You just need persistence, paperwork, and a lawyer who actually enjoys chaos. Now the project's frozen, the council's silent, and this homeowner still has his house, along with the best dinner party story ever. Moral of the story? Sometimes no is the most powerful word in the world, especially when it's backed by a good lawyer and the evening news. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.